Welcome back. We're doing CYSA practice quiz number 4. Practice quiz number 4. That's 5 questions in total. We're going to go through those. We're going to answer them. We're going to dissect them. We're going to figure out why the answer is the answer. And hopefully you get something out of it. That's our goal for today. I would say that I try to make these quizzes as close to the real thing as possible. Obviously, I don't know what the real quiz questions are. I've forgotten them. Proper English, right? I've taken all 3 versions of the CYSA. I've had CYSA since it came out. And the latest version is a little bit more difficult than what I've seen in the past. Definitely a little bit more hands-on in there. So we're going to go through and we're definitely going to look at some logs. We're definitely going to look at some other information on there. But don't discount the hands-on. I used to tell students when they were doing Security Plus, I used to tell them, hey, when you study for Security Plus, and you go to take that exam, as soon as you pass it, go schedule your CYSA because it's really not that much more difficult than Security Plus. I stopped saying that with version 3. I stopped saying it with version 3 because it doesn't work that way anymore, right? It's got a little bit more difficult. And so Security Plus, it's more of a higher level. It's more of a broad spectrum exam where CYSA is more narrowed viewed. However, just like Security Plus, you can expect between 70 and 90 questions. You can expect some performance-based questions, usually between 2 and 4. And you can pretty much get out of there the same process that you saw in Security Plus. I had a student ask me, do you think I need Security Plus before CYSA? And I would say 100% yes. 100% yes. I would not do CYSA before Security Plus. I feel like Security Plus has that knowledge attached to it, that foundational knowledge that you need. It's also, I think, going to prepare you a little bit better for CYSA. When should I study for CYSA after my Security Plus? Immediately after. I know that a lot of people are saying, oh, you need 2 years of experience. I disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree. I would study for CYSA right after Security Plus. You've done past your Security Plus. You have it in hand. Take a day, go celebrate, and then immediately start studying for CYSA. It'll be easier that way, I think, than taking a long break or waiting a couple years. I really do believe that. The nice thing is, if you already have Security Plus or Network Plus or any other certifications for that matter, and you go and you take Security Plus, or excuse me, CYSA Plus, and you pass it, it automatically brings all your other CompTIA certifications up to that same date. So you don't have to ever take them again, which means in the future, you would only have to take CYSA again if you wanted to. And then that would bring all of those other ones up to date. And so if you feel like I'm getting ready to pass my Security Plus, or my Security Plus is getting ready to expire, or something of that form, and you're debating whether to take CYSA versus Security Plus, do I think it's valuable to take CYSA over Security Plus? Absolutely. I 100% do. I would go that route. I don't know if I would take Security Plus again, to be honest. I don't feel like the knowledge you're going to get out of it, or even through the studying, is worth it. I do think that if you already have Security Plus, CYSA is the next logical step. And that's why I tell my students quite often, remember, you should have by your freshman year Network Plus, by your junior year Security Plus, and by your senior year CYSA. I used to tell them differently. I used to say Security Plus, CYSA, and then pick one. I'm against that now. I'm seeing the value of Network Plus in there as more and more employers that I talk to see value in it. So I would definitely go with those trio. And after that, well, then you can kind of pick whatever direction you want. I would not go after CEH or Pentest Plus. I just wouldn't. I just don't feel, unless you're in that field, unless you've been in cybersecurity for 3 or 4 years already, if you're brand new into the field, then I don't feel the need to go after offensive security. I'm sorry, the offensive security jobs just aren't there like they are on the defensive side. If you're already doing cyber defense, do I feel like those are pertinent? Absolutely, 100%. Go have a blast, go do it. But if you're just entering the career field, if you're just now in college, or if you're breaking into the career field, you just got done with Security Plus, and you're looking at the next exam to take, I would not start on Pentest Plus, CH, OSCP, any of those offensive ones, until I've been in there for 3 or 4 years. That's just me. That's my take on it. But, you know, I'm not a pen tester. I'm not offensive cybersecurity. So even though I do a lot of labs and I show a lot of different things, I show them to show how to defend against them. So anyway, I feel like I've talked enough. I feel like I've talked way too much than what I should have. Let's move on. shall we? Let's start answering some questions. Question number 1, during a security assessment, the following vulnerability was found. Web server is vulnerable to XSS attack. What is the primary impact of this vulnerability? What is the primary impact of this vulnerability? You hear me gripe on this all the time with certification exams, especially with Security Plus, Network Plus, and even now CySA. Know the acronyms. Know the acronyms. If you know the acronyms, it literally answers the question about 90% of the time. About 90%. I firmly believe that. Not all the time, but a lot of times, right? And so if you know those acronyms, I feel like 40% of the quizzes are answered just by knowing acronyms. I firmly believe that. Even with CySA. It's amazing that CompTIA writes their exams, and I feel like there's no choice, but the exams are written, and if you know the acronyms, the question to the acronym is almost in there, and it's just the way the acronym is, and that's a benefit that you should be aware of when you're looking at answering these quiz questions. So be aware of that. Definitely go through if you don't know the acronyms, maybe you forgot, maybe you're not up to date to them, maybe you've been working in private industry for long enough, and you're like, I want to expand into cyber or whatnot, and you're not familiar with it. I would definitely know the acronyms. I cannot pound on that enough. Moving on, let's answer this one. If I'm going too fast for you, you can always hit that pause button. Let's go through this one. During a security assessment, the following vulnerability was found. Web server is vulnerable to XSS attack. What is the primary impact of this vulnerability? Well, I think it's safe to say that it's not a denial of service attack. I think we can safely say not a denial of service attack. So we can take B off the board. I feel like that's the easiest one to take off the board. And so let's get rid of that one. The next one I feel like would be the next easiest one to get off the board. Probably D, data interception and decryption. Data interception would be man in the middle attack, and decryption would be, I don't know what decryption would be. I know that data interception is man in the middle attack. I don't think there is an attack that specifically says decryption on there, not that I'm aware of. So definitely not a XSS attack. That leaves A and C, unauthorized access to server and execution of malicious scripts in the user's browser. Well, if you know that XSS is cross-site scripting, then you probably also know what a cross-site scripting attack is. And it's not unauthorized access to server. It is definitely execution of malicious scripts in the user's browser. C would be our correct answer. C would be the correct answer. If you answered C, give yourself a crisp high five. Pat yourself on the back. Congratulations. If you got it wrong, that's okay. If you learned something, that's what we're here for. That's the education portion of what we're doing today. So if you learned something, there you go. It's execution of malicious scripts. You see me wafting in my chair. My dog is under my desk. And she's playing with my foot, and she's a German Shepherd, so she has the ability to move me around how she sees fit. I think I'm going to have to pause the video and let her out. All right, let's move on to question number 2. Question 2, which of the following is the main purpose of a risk assessment in cybersecurity? Which of the following is the main purpose of a risk assessment in cybersecurity? Definitely something I would expect to see not only on CySA, but Security Plus as well. I would expect to see this question on both tests. So be aware of this one. This is definitely something that we could see on both. I feel like it is also going to be, I'd say, not difficult. Not a difficult question. Probably medium. A lot of these questions are going to be medium. CySA definitely doesn't do a lot of stuff easy, in my personal opinion. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just means that I don't see it a lot of times. So, as being less than what I would consider to be a medium question. And we see that quite often in CySA. All right, I feel like it's time. I feel like you've had enough time to answer this question. Let's go ahead and do it. If you need more time, go ahead and pause that video. I do want to point out before we do that, though, remember, we still only want to be spending about 45 seconds per quiz question. We really don't want to go over 45 seconds. So as we're going through these, I want you to start to train your mind. I've got 45 seconds. 45 seconds is all the time I got. Read the question, read the answers, read the question, answer the question. That should be your key. If you don't know what the answer is, take a guess. Take a guess. We'll go more into that later. Let's move on to the answer. Which of the following is the main purpose of a risk assessment in cybersecurity? I think we can safely say that the main purpose is not to implement the latest security technologies. I feel like that's the easiest one right off the bat, right? To implement the latest security technologies, probably not part of a risk assessment. Probably not the main purpose of a risk assessment. I think the other one we could really get rid of, that doesn't make any sense, is to eliminate all potential risks. First off, I don't think there's a way to get rid of all potential risks. I think we can mitigate a lot of risks. I think that we can remove some risks. We can transfer some risks, but I don't think we can eliminate all risks. I don't think that's a possibility. Remember, cybersecurity is not about eliminating. I guess we could. Some smart student, some smart aleck is going to be like, hey, I could unplug my computer and power it off. Yes, you could. But I would argue even then, someone could walk in and steal the computer. They could physically steal the computer. So you're not even then eliminating all potential risks, Mr. Smart Alex student. All right, so we've gotten rid of A. We've gotten rid of C. That leaves D, to comply with regulatory requirements, and B, to identify and prioritize risks based on their impact and likelihood. I feel like that's almost too much, but B would be our correct answer. We do use risk assessments to comply with regulatory requirements. Every once in a while, we have to do that. But the main purpose is going to identify and prioritize risks based on their impact and likelihood, because that's what a risk is. Risk is all about understanding impact and likelihood. All right, moving on. Let's move on now that I've given her props. All right, question number 3. A security analyst is investigating an incident and finds the following log entries on a server. What type of log activity or network activity is most likely being observed in these log entries? What do you think? I'm going to give you a second to read through this log. We'll go through it together. We're gonna go through it a little bit together and see if we can't find the right answer as we're going through it. If you know the answer, go ahead and throw it up there. Get it firmly in your head, I guess is what I should say, and then we'll figure out what it is. This one I would rate as fairly difficult. For those that are going on the 1 to 5 scale, I would rate it as a firm 4. I would rate it as a hard. If we went from very easy to medium to very hard to very hard, I would rate this one as a hard. I always rate the log questions or the output questions as hard or very hard, because I often find that students have a good knowledge or foundational knowledge of the basics, but when it comes to the actual logs or when it comes to the output files, then we can see some problems in there. So let's dissect this one. I feel like we've looked at it enough. As always, if you need more time, you can always pause the video. So let's go through this log. Let's see what's going on here. We can see here June 30th at 08:15 in the morning and 34 seconds. We have server to kernel. We can see firewall in is ETH0. We can see the output is going to MAC. And here's the MAC address right here. We can see the source IP address on 185.24.13.2, destination 10.0.0.2. We can see the LAN of 52. If we scroll over, it's time to live 64. We can see an ID. That's the ID number, 12345, 1234556, 1234557. We can see the protocol being used is TCP. We can see the source port of 443, destination port of 80. We see that's going against a Windows system, and then all this other good stuff. And we see a send, right? And here's where our clues are at, right? We see, if you go through it, you can start to tell the only thing that's really different is the time, which is to be expected, right? We see it completely one after another, right? This isn't a minute later. This isn't something else. This is right after another. And then we can see it's coming from different IP addresses. The source IP is 184, 185, 177, and then 142, all going to this same destination, just like that. And so this would be indicative of what type of attack? Well, it's not normal web browsing traffic. We know that. Not normal web browsing traffic. It's not a DNS query traffic. If it was, then our port would be 53, right? That would be the clue for 53. So definitely not DNS traffic. It's not file transfer activity. If it was file transfer activity, we would see, something like FTP. We'd see a higher port. We'd see port 20, 21, somewhere around there, maybe even a 22, maybe even possibly a 23, right? So we would see that there, but we're seeing port 80, which is definitely on the web, which means where is this type of attack? Well, it's obviously a DDoS attack. It's obviously a distributed denial of service attack that we're coming to CN that is trying to go through that process. And that's something that we might see. I'm not too sure about the source IP addresses though. I would expect to see something in the 10 range, but that's okay. That's okay. It gets our point across, and that's really what we wanted today. And so we can see here we've got a DDoS attack. I actually feel like this one wasn't too difficult if you looked at the answers. If you didn't know how to read the log file, if you didn't extrapolate from that, that could be an issue. It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon to see different traffic. Like I would expect to see, I don't know, 10.00.5 and 10.00.6 and 10.007, something like that from an internal IP address rather than outside. But I feel like the question still does what we want it to do. It's different IP addresses coming from the source to a single destination. And this would be indicative of a DDoS attack on the log system, DDoS attack. All right, that's question number 3. Let's move on. Question number 4. Question number 4. During a routine check, a security analyst notices the following entries in the web server log. What type of attack is indicated by these log entries? What do you think? I feel like, again, this is one of those attacks or one of these questions where even with the log, if you look at the question, if you're looking at what it is, and if you know something, it's just there. It's just point blank what type of attack this is, at least in my mind, right? I've probably given away a hint by accident. My apologies if I did. But what type of attack is indicated by these log entries? This would be an easy question. Well, I say easy for CYSA, right? Probably a medium question, probably, right? But anyway, let's go in. Let's go. Question 4. During a routine check, a security analyst notices the following entries in the web server. What type of attack is indicated by these logs? Well, if we look at the logs, we see June 29th, we see server 1, we see HTTP, logs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 6, or 4 through 5 and 6. We see the get index.php, and then we see a script alert, XSS script on HTTP. Well, that's our answer right there. It's XSS. So now we just need to figure out what XSS is. And if you know the acronym, you know the answer. Well, is it a script attack? Well, it's a type of script attack. Is it directory traversal? No, it is not directory traversal attack. Definitely 100%. That has nothing to do with directories. Is it a cross-site request forgery attack? Well, no, it's not a CSRF attack. We know it's not cross-site request forgery, which means it's some type of scripting attack. It's either a script attack or a cross-site scripting attack. But if you knew that XSS stood for cross-site scripting, you knew the answer, right? And that's why I say this one was fairly easy, because it literally tells us what the answer is in the log. So again, cross-site scripting, very easy on this one, in my opinion, if you know the acronyms. If you didn't know the acronym, you were probably fuddling around a little bit. And then this one right here, the script attack, put there purposely to offset us. 100% put there to make us think twice about cross-site scripting. That's all it was. All right, moving on. Last question for the night. You perform a vulnerability scan using Nessus and receive the following output. What is the primary recommendation provided by Nessus for this vulnerability? It doesn't tell us what the recommendation is. It doesn't. What is your primary recommendation provided, or what would you recommend? And we'll see these types of questions on CYSA. I'm going to give you a second for this one. I feel like if you do the job, you know it, right? But remember, there's real world, and then there's CompTIA's everything is perfect in the world and according to the book, and the roses are red, and rain doesn't really fall from the sky except at night when we're all asleep, unless you like the rain, in which case it'll pour whenever you want it to. Unicorns are out there, and rainbows shine everywhere. That's in the world of CompTIA. That's how this works. Otherwise, it has nothing to do with the real world, because I can tell you the real world is not like that. But yeah, in the world of CompTIA, when you're taking your CYSA exam, remember, everything's perfect. We know that it's not that way in cybersecurity. That's why I often recommend to students to get their CYSA right after Security Plus, because you'll get, if you do the job, you'll get befuddled. You'll be like, that's not how this works. And we know it's not how the real world works, but that's how it's supposed to work. And so students or people that have been working in industry and they come back to take these certification exams sometimes find it to be a little bit more difficult than students. Because students are always taught the best way. And then when you get to your real job, you're like, wait a second, that's not how the book says it. Of course it's not how the book says it. But that's real world, right? But CompTIA, by the book. By the book. All right, let's answer this one again. If it's taking too much time, or if I'm taking not enough time, or whatever, you get my point. You can always fast forward it. You can always slow it down. You can always speed it up. You can always pause it, I guess is what I'm saying. Let's take a look. You perform a vulnerability scan using Nessus and receive the following output. Plugin ID 19506. Doesn't really tell us anything. Risk factor high. Doesn't tell us really anything. The description is where we get our information. The remote SSH service allows password authentication. Well, that's a problem. So what is the primary recommendation provided by, or should be utilized, right? And I see this, I could see this as being a question that we would see in CYSA. So what would we do here? Well, would we change the SSH port number? No, that is never the right answer. Changing the port number is never the right answer. Never ever change the port number. Never the right answer. Unless there's two services operating on the same port. Then, and only then, may we change the port number. But that's more of an IT thing. That's not even a cyber thing. That's more of an IT thing. Disable this SSH service. This would stop the attack or stop this problem 100%. If we disable the SSH service, then it wouldn't allow for password authentication. So there's always that. We could disable password authentication and use key-based authentication. Well, if we disable password authentication, that would definitely solve the problem. And use key-based authentication, that's a possible. We could update the SSH service to the latest version. I don't feel like that's going to fix the problem. I feel like our service is set up to allow password authentication. And so if it's set up that way, then that's not really going to fix it. It's just going to update the version. We're still going to have password authentication. So we have remote SSH service allows password authentication. We can either disable the service, or we can disable password authentication and use key-based authentication. Well, you guessed it. We are going to disable password authentication and use key-based authentication. And remember, we don't disable services. That goes through a change management process. That goes through an entire predicament that we can be utilizing. If we disable service, it no longer works at all. And we are not there to stop services whenever possible, right? Obviously, we have to believe in our mind, we have to believe that the service is set up for a reason, that somebody just didn't willy-nilly decide, hey, I want to use SSH service or FTP service or something else. And so we're not just going to go around disabling things. That's not something we do without a change management process in place. And so we must disable the password authentication, and then we change it to a key-based authentication. This would then solve our problem of the SSH service allowing for password authentication. That would be the correct answer. C would be the right answer. I hope that made sense. All right, we've gone through our 5 questions. We struggled a little bit, at least I did, with speaking today. I felt like I was mumbling quite a bit. My apologies in advance. If you found this to be helpful, if you found it to be educational, I would greatly appreciate it if you would hit that like, that subscribe, and of course that little bell icon. I would appreciate it. Otherwise, my name is Dr. K. Until next time, we'll see you later. Have a good one.